think you're good.
Oh,
all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're live on X. Today we're here with a very special guest with Simon Willison.
Hey, good to be here.
Yes, and we also have Ronald Manak, my co-host here.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us live. There's a very special edition here at the AI Engineering World's Fair, taking place in San Francisco. Some people have actually said this is South by San Francisco. It's kind of that hypey, type of thing. Yeah. I wouldn't say that. We don't have any cool concerts and stuff, but maybe soon next year. I think what's more hype is the fact that we have amazing talent in the room that are just around you, they just bump into. So we're so happy that you're joining us today to just be able to talk all kinds of things, LLMs. You just finished a talk today, and Ronald,
the keynote.
Yes.
Yeah, I did
the keynote speaker.
Yeah.
I did the morning keynote on about 18 hours notice. There was OpenAI dropped out with like the day before the event, and Swix asked me if I had a keynote in my pocket, and I didn't, but 18 hours is enough, if you skip most of the sleep. I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Whoa.
I did it. I pulled it off. It seemed to go over well, so I'm pleased with that.
It went over very well. It was like an awesome speech. I think it's live streamed. I think you can watch it.
It is, yeah. It's up on YouTube already, yeah.
Awesome. So if people haven't seen it yet, go watch it because it is really, really good. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. So one thing you touched on in the keynote was the state of the art of the LLMs. Now I know you gave a keynote as well on this conference last October.
Yes. And the state of things was very different 8 months ago.
Oh, things happened?
Oh yeah, quite a few. It's been a busy period. Yeah.
What happened?
Oh my goodness, what did happen? So, in October, GPT-4 was the leading model still. It had come out in March. Nothing else had even come remotely close to it. October, it was a few weeks before GPT-4 Turbo was announced at the OpenAI Dev Day, which was a huge leap forward. That gave us the vision access. It gave us GPTs. It gave us the text-to-speech features, all of that kind of stuff. But then what got really exciting was this year. We had, up until about February, there was no one else who was anywhere close to GPT-4. Like, they were so far ahead of everyone else. In February, we had the Gemini 1.5 Pro models from Google, which are definitely GPT-4 class. In March, we had Claude 3 Opus and Claude 3 Haiku. Claude 3 Opus was for a while, I think, the best model. GPT-4o came out and just sort of leapt ahead of Opus. And then last week, 3.5 Sonnet from Claude, astoundingly good model. Like, for my money, better than they have the best model available right now.
Wow.
And it's
So you
not
think it's better than
OpenAI.
GPT-4 right now?
I think GPT-4o is not as good as Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And actually, GPT-4o has a few things that make people think it's not quite as good as the original sort of GPT-4 Turbo. I think for the stuff that I do, Sonnet is giving me better results.
That's fascinating because it is a very small model, right?
No, Sonnet's a big one. Sonnet 3.5 is, well, we don't know because they don't tell you how big these things anymore. It feels like...
I thought Opus was the big one, but not Sonnet. But am I wrong?
No.
Yeah?
Well,
yeah?
This is the confusing thing. It's Claude 3 versus Claude 3.5. So Claude 3 has 3 models, Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus, small, medium, big. Claude 3.5 will have those 3 models again, but they've only released the middle one. So Claude 3.5 Sonnet, weirdly, is better than Claude 3 Opus.
Gotcha. But there will be a bigger model out for 3.5
Claude 3.5 Opus, people are expecting to be extraordinary.
That's going to be
like that. Maybe that's
wow.
the GPT-5 competition. Maybe we don't know yet, right? I'm most excited about Claude 3.5 Haiku because Claude 3 Haiku was the inexpensive Claude model back in March. And the thing about that one is it's cheaper than GPT 3.5.
Yeah.
It's better than GPT, like significantly better than GPT 3.5. It handles 200,000 tokens, so it's a big token model, and it handles images. So we've now got this dirt cheap model that you can chuck images at. You can chuck like half a novel at it. It's very fast. It's super cheap. It's amazing. If you're building on top of these things, you should be looking at Haiku first, I think. That and Gemini 1.5 Flash is Google's competitor to Haiku, and it's really good as well. It's very cheap. It's very high quality. There are some very interesting cheap models that didn't exist 3 months ago. Like these are new to the space.
Yeah, yeah. And these are all closed source models or closed weight
Absolutely.
models.
They're all closed.
Internet connection as well.
Yep, they're all API models. the openly licensed open weights model space is also getting super exciting. Right? We have Meta's Llama 370B is edging up there to GPT-4 class, and I've run that on my Mac. It's like a 30 gigabyte model file. I had to plug in an external hard drive to use it, but it worked. That's pretty extraordinary. My favorite small model at the moment is Microsoft have this thing called Phi 3, which is tiny. It's like a 3B tiny
Oh,
model.
Phi 3 PHI.
PHI.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
it's
I call it
absolutely
Phi
tiny.
sometimes,
yeah.
It's the file is like 4 gigabytes.
Yeah.
It gives me ChatGPT 3.5 vibes. Like it's
Wow.
very good at summarization. It's good at like extracting JSON, all of that. Microsoft will tell you it doesn't know much. Like it doesn't know about what classes
Right.
of supernova and stuff. But that's okay. I don't need a small model that knows everything in the world. I need one that can search Wikipedia for things when it doesn't know. All of that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then there's the Mistral models I'm really into. There's a model, Mistral 7B, before Phi 3 came along. It was my favorite small model. And that runs on my telephone. Like there's an app that I can install from the App Store called MLC Chat. And now I can run a sort of GPT 3.5 class model entirely on my phone. It uses all available RAM and crashes all my other applications, but it does work.
That's
Basically, what you're saying is like the top of the class, the best model that we had like a year and a half ago, more or less, or less than a year and a half ago. Because March, GPT-4 was introduced in March of last year.
Exactly, yeah.
So a year and a little bit. Now we have models that are as good as GPT-3.
They are GPT 3.5. I called it hot garbage on the stage today.
You did, yes.
Because it's like ranked 66 on the LM-SIS arena. It is not a very good model. I mean, fair enough, it's like a few years old at this point. It's not very cheap either. Like Claude and Gemini Flash are cheaper than 3.5. They're much better than 3.5. Nobody should be using that thing anymore.
Wow.
And you don't need to use it as a end user either, because OpenAI have finally made GPT 4.0 free for their free users.
Gotcha.
And Anthropic made Claude 3.5 Sonnet, their best model, also free. So as a end user, there is no excuse for not using the sort of top of the class models now, which is really exciting, because 3.5 is junk. Like people who think AI is rubbish, if they've only ever played with GPT 3.5, they're right, it is rubbish.
Yes.
But there's a lot more to the space than those sort of 2-year-old stale models.
Absolutely.
So what is your take on Apple Intelligence now that they've come out the gate? We haven't had our hands to play with
That's
it yet.
the problem. Like
Cool.
Apple Intelligence looks fantastic on paper. Nobody outside of Apple has had any interactions with it at all. It just hasn't happened, right? So, so it's hard to say. Like, it looks to me like they've done something really interesting where they're not really just shipping another chatbot. Like they've got all of these LLM enhanced features. There's summarization in Safari now, and it'll help you rewrite your text notes to be more formal or whatever. All of these are handled on device, which is incredibly exciting. And like I said, I can run Mistral models on my phone. This phone has the hardware to run a good language model. Apple have been sat on that power for years now, right? The neural processor isn't a new thing.
Right.
But they're finally harnessing that. I love that they're not shipping new products. This is a John Gruber observation from the other day. They're shipping features.
Right.
Like, okay, we'll take all of our existing apps, and if there's a way that this generative AI stuff can make that app a little bit more useful, we'll do that.
Wow.
That's really exciting.
Amazing.
Like,
yes.
Yeah. And the thing where they can run the larger models in the cloud, but with that total guarantee of privacy, that's astounding computer science.
Exactly.
That is.
Yes.
The paper took me like half an hour to read, right? It's not a short document, but there is so much in there that's really interesting about the supply chain for how they get these servers built and delivered, how they make sure that your phone is talking to a server running verified software. There's so much to it.
Yes, and there's, for those who don't know, Apple released a security white paper that they updated earlier this year in May that actually details even more, like what the secure boot looks like, and has even more technical details of like data classes and what's stored and what's secured at what levels, from like A through whatever. And there's like a lot of even more technical jargon. It's not exactly explaining its relationships, but that's part of the whole security layers that they've taken very seriously for numbers of decades, and it's really, really exciting. What's really nice that's just happening right now is as people here at the event, they're just coming in. So we have Nicholas as well. Nick, I'm going to have you take my seat for a little bit. I got to head on out. We also have Manuel, who also gave a talk earlier.
What did I walk into?
You walked into a live stream, actually.
You're live on the internet right now.
You're actually live, yeah. We have like almost 100 people.
I
Come on.
All right, cool.
You can say hello. So this is our friends here, and this is kind of the camera here. I think Ronald's kind of hosting an interview right now.
Ronald, do you recognize me?
Yes.
I do.
Yeah.
Nice to actually meet you.
Yes. And then I'm going to go grab that.
Step on it.
real quick. Yeah. So I'll be right back. Yes.
So you're interviewing Simon?
Yes.
Oh, it's just kind of like
yes.
an engineering.
Well, it's
hangout.
like an informal. I mean,
It's an
we
informal
could, like,
conversation.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
wanna switch over?
So feel free to chime in.
Oh yeah. Let me.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about we've seen like a few things recently about like the code interpreter was a thing that GPT or JetGPT had for a while, and seemed to be like this magical thing. Now we've got like Claude artifacts.
Yes, they just turned those on last week along
Yes.
with 3.5 Summit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am possibly the world's biggest fan of ChatGPT Code Interpreter. I've been using it since the alpha preview a year and a half ago. And this is the thing where ChatGPT can both write Python code and then execute that Python code in a secure Kubernetes container somewhere, and then work with the results. And you can upload files into it, you can download files from it. It can't access the internet on its own. That's the one limitation they've placed on it. But it means that basically ChatGPT can do anything that Python can do, and Python is a general purpose programming language, so that's almost unlimited in terms of what you can do with it. The problem is it's not just undocumented, it's invisible, right? It's built into the regular ChatGPT interface. It sort of kicks into action when it feels like it. A lot of people don't believe it exists. I keep on talking about it, people are like, yeah, it just hallucinated that. And I'm like, no, there are indications in the UI that tell you that it's running Python code, but you have to know what those indications are and look out for them. When you know how to use this, if you're an experienced Python programmer and an experienced prompter, you can fly with this thing. I had a demo in the talk I gave this morning where I wanted to recreate a chart that somebody had created showing that was plotting token cost against benchmark score for different language models. They published this back in March. I wanted an updated version. I gave GPT-4 a screenshot of their chart and a TSV file with some extra data and said, do it again, but with this new data, and it did. And, okay, I had to tweak it a little bit, say, okay, make the labels bigger, drop this, that kind of thing. But I had a conversation where I was able to recreate quite a sophisticated, like logarithmic scaled chart in a few prompts and a little bit of back and forth. That's amazing, right? Being able to do that kind of thing interactively is so cool. The equivalent feature in Claude is this thing they call Claude Artifacts, which they launched last week. And it's not quite the same thing. It's, again, Claude can write HTML and JavaScript and CSS this time. And then it can pop
It's
open...
not Python. This is not
No,
Python-based.
Claude is not Python-based.
Oh, okay.
Although
Yeah.
there are tricks. But yeah, so Claude can write, it can write JavaScript, and then it can show you that HTML and JavaScript running in your browser. So code
Wait,
interpreter...
the code runs on your browser.
Exactly.
Ah,
Yeah. Whereas
okay.
code interpreter,
So-
it's Python code running on
Right,
their
you get
servers.
like a container
Yeah,
on
Claude,
the OpenAI
no
server.
server-side component at all. They pop open an iframe and they
Oh,
run
no
the
way.
code inside of it.
Wow.
But it means that you can build like full user interfaces. Like I did an experiment the other day where I just said, hey, give me a Mandelbrot fractal explorer that I can like zoom in and out on, and
Yeah.
it made one perfectly. And then I said, make it so I can drag to pan, and it added drag the image to pan back and forth. And then I tried it on my mobile phone, it didn't work. So I said, okay, add touch support and pinch zoom, and it did.
Oh wow.
And so now I've got a Mandelbrot fractal explorer, and then I was like, do it in Barbie colors, and now it's in a Barbie color.
Have you ever tried, like, this is a weird concept that I'm starting to explore, where it's like I don't even need it to output, a programming language or a UI, because I can, as long as I'm building the application, right? Because I'm going to say, like, you are the application I want to have. And then you don't need to
Oh,
display
the thing
to
where
just-
basically it emulates an application that doesn't actually exist.
But I tell it like, oh, output your widgets really concisely. So if you have a Mandelbrot thing, you'll be like, oh, I display Mandelbrot and I have a touch callback. Right?
Interesting.
And then as a user, you say like pinch,
Uh-huh.
and it will say like, oh yeah, like I'm zooming in zoom factor 2.
Wow. No,
And,
I get that idea of essentially simulating software that doesn't exist yet. I've not done much of that.
What you can do after that is like write the spec for yourself,
Uh-huh.
right? And like I'll put some README document of how to build itself and whatever.
Oh, I see. No, I'm
And
far
then-
too lazy for that. I get it to do all of the work.
And then you do like build yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and it works.
Interesting.
It is
So-
compliant.
I mean, that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
so I'm a Python programmer most of the time, and a lot of the code I write these days, I write walking my dog, because ChatGPT, the app, has really good voice
Yes,
voice
I
support.
love that.
I can pop in
It's my
AirPods and I
favorite.
can literally tell it, yeah, write a Python function that opens up a SQLite database and does these things to it. And by the time I get home, I've got code that I know works because it's actually run the code and tested it and found the bugs and fixed them.
And it reads the STD out, so you're like, oh, this is the result. And you
Right,
can talk to
exactly.
The result.
But that's the thing that's different about the Claude artifacts. The thing that's missing there is the debug loop. Because artifacts, it writes the code and it shows it to you, but it can't tell if the code worked. Like, you might get an error message,
Right.
and it doesn't know.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
actually
yeah.
find yourself taking screenshots of the
yeah.
error message and dumping them back in there.
I thought
which
they would
is-
have that built in, but
I think
I
they
do
have.
that naturally.
So I read around in the
It's
source
easy for
code.
them to add.
There are
Yeah.
that's the thing. The messages are flowing back from the iframe to the parent, and they're not operational yet. I think they just haven't turned the feature on yet.
Can you add a grease monkey that just like captures that and puts it into the text area?
You could, and you could get Claude to write that grease monkey for you.
Yeah, of course.
Take the screenshot when that. Yeah, so there are things like that. But this is the whole model of a thing that can write code and then run the code and then get the errors and rerun it. That's almost, it's kind of a defense against hallucination.
Yeah,
Like when you get
I
these
mean,
things
if
to write
it works,
code,
it works, right?
sometimes they invent an API method that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And then they try it and it doesn't work, and they're like, oh, that doesn't exist, I'll try something else.
Well, I'll write it.
Yeah, yep. I mean, we might even have to do some work at
Yeah,
some
for
point.
like
you
the
know?
logic side of things, like RAG and search helps with the facts, but this helps with the logic and the math.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like people, LLMs can do math. They can do maths now because they've got Python or
Yeah.
JavaScript, and they can outsource to
And you
that.
can trust it,
Right,
So-
because you can at least, if you're a programmer, you can see what it did.
Yeah.
So what does it mean for security? Because I know that that's something you're pretty much into. So if I have code running in my browser that's
Uh-huh.
been generated by an AI,
I have not cracked it yet, and I've
Yeah?
been trying. Yeah. So
of course you have.
Claude 3. So the Claude 3 artifacts, they're fired up in an iframe with a sandbox attribute that allows it to run scripts that doesn't allow it to do other things.
So this is not
They-
this is not WebAssembly or anything. This is
No,
just
no, it's
pure
JavaScript in an iframe,
Wow. Yeah.
but it's also served with CSP headers that restrict what it can do as well. So
Yeah.
like, it's clever. Like I get the feeling from digging around and poking at it that they put some very smart web security engineers on it to lock that thing down. Somebody's going to find some
It doesn't
kind
do
of break.
Python?
Claude 3 artifacts don't do Python, except it's allowed to load anything that's on CDN.js, and Pyodide, the
Yeah.
Python and WebAssembly, is on CDN.js.
I was telling Fernando about
So-
that. I got it to run Python within it. So
Yeah.
I had a Python.
And the frustration,
IDE.
if only it could talk back to the parent, you could do everything the code interpreter
Yeah.
does, but in your browser, which is even better.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
So
What-
can you use the code, the artifacts to change like the interface, the Claude interface itself?
No, they locked that down. The iframe, and again, this is smart web engineering. The iframe is served under a different, I forget the terminology for it, like a different domain essentially. You cannot communicate, you can't overwrite the Claude interface. You can send controlled messages back and forth, but
Right,
those are
right.
a protocol that they've set up for things. So far, I've not heard of anyone breaking it. It feels like there's probably going to be an exploit at some point, maybe, but they did a good job. Same thing with OpenAI. The code interpreter Kubernetes container is well locked down.
Yeah.
Like, I have poked around in that thing quite a lot. And I know I'm not an expert security exploiter, but a lot of security researchers have dug into it, and so far it's held up.
I've got a question for you. Do you work with teams of programmers? Because right? You write like your SQL code while walking with your dog. So, right? You can write like basically. I feel like what I used to write in a week, I can just like sometimes if it works well, I can do it in 5 minutes.
Sometimes, yeah.
And so the weird thing is like, how do you bring that into a team where people are maybe like discovering Copilot, right? And you're like,
Right. So
you guys are
I
doing
work
right now.
independently.
Yeah.
So I'm working on lots of open source projects, and I've got like open source contributors. I've got one chap who I'm working with on a regular basis who's very sort of AI competent already. I'd find it fascinating to work on a larger team at this point because there's so many. Like there are so many skills and sort of intuitions that you have to develop with this. Code reviewing gets more interesting. Yeah, no, I don't have a great feeling for how this stuff is impacting larger engineering teams yet.
Yeah.
Is that the case? I'm trying to think. When did GPT-3... GPT-3 I only started playing with in 2020, and I last was employed in a team in 2019. So yeah, it's...
And at that time, you weren't like walking your dog and
No.
speaking to people.
No, I had to
Not
go
yet.
to an office and like sit at a desk.
Because it's weird. Like it really feels like yesterday I was at the conference and I generated 20,000 lines of code
Right.
for different ideas that I had, and they all look decent.
That's
Like
the
they're
thing. For
probably gonna work great.
prototyping, this stuff is amazing.
I love it,
This
yeah.
is what I love about the Claude artifacts in particular, because what they've done is, I think they've fine-tuned, or they've trained Claude Sonnet to be good at Tailwind CSS and React and one particular component library, and it's just got really good taste. You ask it for an interface, and it
Yeah.
will drop in a
Their data set is
well-styled,
very good.
Right.
very
right.
clean, like. And the frustrating thing is that when it writes stuff with React, I find it quite hard to copy and paste that code out because I don't have a React app up and running. But you can tell it don't use any dependencies, and it'll just use JavaScript and CSS, and then you get a thing you can copy and paste straight
So
out.
that's
again.
interesting. That kind of suggests that they had this feature thought out already before they did a pre-training of the model.
I think so. I'm
right, yeah,
because you
yeah,
can actually
yeah.
run artifacts against Claude 3 Haiku as well, and
Oh,
it's
you
not
can?
nearly as good.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's a
Oh.
feature of not the feature of the model; it's a feature of the interface.
Okay. So maybe they had it already, but didn't release it for 3.0 because
I think
results
maybe it
were-
wasn't good enough.
Right.
And
right.
then
for
Sonnet
three-
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
best coding model I've ever used
Yeah,
by a
it's-
very long way.
it's
Like,
super
Yeah.
it's shockingly good. I'm building very,
I don't
very
think I've
elaborate
had
things
broken
with it.
code come out of it.
Yeah.
Actually,
Wow.
now that I think of it, right? It's like
Me too.
I don't think I did.
I think I have with a few like really obscure things, but I expect that, like
Like weird
So-
algorithm stuff, right? Like reasoning stuff that requires intelligence. Like I don't even try. I'm like,
right,
this-
because
this thing-
language models are next token predictors. That's
exactly,
not their
yeah.
strong point. That's
So what the thing is, what you're saying is like Claude, the new Claude is better at,
Yeah.
at coding than
Yes.
like what is the code
Code Stroll?
code Stroll?
Codestrol's
I
pretty
haven't
good,
spent
yeah.
enough time with Code Stroll to
Sonnet is
definitively
way
say
better.
that. I would
Code Stroll
expect
is-
Sonnet to be better.
is amazing, but it does the errors that 3.5 used to do, where you have like midway will just like go completely in the wrong direction.
Also-
and
Right,
it's like going to
right.
stay with
It's
Yeah.
worth
He's
pointing out,
confident,
GPT 4.0, I've seen it get into a lot of loops where it makes the same mistake
Yeah.
over and over again,
That
which is
sucks.
weird because GPT-4 Turbo didn't used to do that. So that's like the one regression in 4.0 for coding is that, it's not good at debugging anymore.
My theory, it's only 80 billion parameters, and it's a diluted version of GPT-4. And
Maybe.
that's why they're going to offer it as the free model.
Yeah, because
that's-
it
it's
was
faster,
half the
it's-
price and twice as
Exactly,
fast, right?
yeah,
so
so it's-
clearly they'd done
And
something
if you
like
look
that.
at the performance of, what is it, Llama 3 70B,
Mhm.
getting close to that size too. So
Right.
that's my
Llama
theory.
370B, I saw Grok, the
Yeah.
Grok,
With
the
the
inference company who are running on their own custom hardware. They're doing Llama 370B for like 50 cents per million tokens or something, 59 cents, and it's fast. That's
it's
super
weird, right? Because
interesting.
there's like the quality of the model doesn't mean that it's like better for me as a programmer. Like there was this period where GPT-4 would always do its like illusion of like not writing the whole thing.
Yeah, the lazy.
The laziness, yeah.
And those days, I would like spend 90% of my day was like filling these dots, and I was like, that's not what I want to spend my day on. And so a faster model, a worse model where I can actually get the whole output and edit it was way more fun, even though it was like
Yeah.
not as good.
Interesting, yeah.
And so I think there's like a huge place for Code Mistral for these like smaller things. I'm like, it's fine. Like I enjoy fixing code actually. Like you know,
It's all about deep sea coder too.
That one I've not played with yet. I've heard
It's
good
also
things.
very good. But,
I heard it was good.
But then you use Sonnet and be like, okay, everything else.
Right. That's the problem I have is that I love playing with models that run on my laptop and my phone and
Me
so
too,
forth.
I love it.
But also, I want to get work done, and I'm
Yeah,
always
yeah.
using GPT-4 or Sonnet for actual work because they're so much better.
I honestly can't even use GPT-4o for code anymore.
Right.
I
Because
don't like it.
Huh. So we talked about like open weights and how they like kind of caught up with like the closed source models. But what we're saying is for coding, the hosted models, the
I
closed
think-
weight models are still king in this.
I mean,
area.
partly because Sonnet is so good.
Yeah.
Like it's.
And-
I'm having that. I'm sure everyone who's worked with these models has had that moment of that crisis moment. You're like, I thought my job was being a programmer, and now this thing can do it. And I got over that with GPT-4, and a little bit that's coming out with Sonnet.
I
Like,
have that feeling weekly, and I just don't care anymore. Like,
Right.
like when artifacts come out, I was like, oh, this changes everything. The week before it was code strong, I was like, oh, I can run this all night. Like, I'm not even gonna think about what that means. I'm just gonna.
I mean,
go for a walk,
honestly,
right? It's like.
once you get to senior software engineer, 10% of your time is writing code, and the other 90% is all of the other stuff, right? And now that 10% of my time is 2 or 3 times more productive, which is great. But there's still like thinking about systems design and all of that kind of stuff. that-
LLMs are not good enough
that
for
they're-
the big
there's
picture stuff. yeah.
Absolutely not, no. And maybe they'll get there, maybe they won't, but
If they have it in the training corpus, right? Like there's a lot of design problems that have been solved before, and you
Yeah.
just need to fill in like the new technology. It's like, oh, Firecracker is a VM, but all the previous VM patterns applied, right? Like code
Right.
sandboxing, so you can just say like, please design it with Firecracker. You know how to
Huh.
do it, right? It's like
that's something that one of the things I enjoy about using this stuff so much is there's all of this technology that I never used in the past because I knew that there was like a 3-month learning curve before I could be productive with it. Now I write things in AppleScript now, and AppleScript is there are Apple people in the room. It is the world's only read-only programming
But it's
language, right?
amazing also.
You can read it and see what it's doing. Good luck figuring out how to write it. But GPT-4 can write it. I've written some really cool things in AppleScript now.
and yeah, I started a new job recently with Ruby, which I never really used, and also 15 years ago I was like, this is not for me. And so I told my manager, like, I don't know if I'll ever become a Ruby programmer. Like, I'm just not gonna try. I'm just gonna generate everything because it's faster, right? And,
Yep.
and I'm
Hell
afraid
yeah.
that I will never really get it, right? And like, I work with people on my team, and I'll be like, what is this clown? You know, just like hunting down stupid errors in GPT instead of learning Ruby. And what actually turned out to happen is that I could eliminate all the, I don't care about the string library in Ruby, like, right? Like, it's going to look like every other string library except that.
Right, you just don't have to learn the difference between Python and Ruby strings anymore.
But however, what I did is every time I wrote code, I was like, oh, what's the idioms that I should use, right? Like, what's the thing? And they're like, oh, give me 5 examples of this idiom. And so
That's a great prompting pattern.
within
Yeah.
2 weeks,
I do that too,
or like
yeah.
make me some exercises to learn like classical or whatever. And then within 2 weeks, I feel like I'm a Ruby programmer at heart.
So that's I mean,
But I
the
still can't
acceleration
invert a
in
string.
learning, especially if you know how to program in other languages, you can pick up a new language now so much faster. Like I shipped production code in Go,
Yeah.
and it's good code. It's got unit tests. It's got continuous
Better than
deployment,
what I would
continuous
write by hand,
integration.
right? It's
I
like
don't know.
scary.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how to do a for loop in Go, but I have a system that's running in production in Go that I'm fully confident in. Like I understood every line of code in it at the time when I shipped it, and then I forgot it all again because I'm not a natural Go programmer.
And like the foot guns, right? Like in Go, it's easy to make a big mess of concurrency, even though people tell you otherwise. And so those are like, it used to take a lot of experience to being like, you shouldn't use channels this way. Like that's right. And there's no way that as a newcomer, I'll see that. in
Just
that
this morning, I was prompting Claude 3.5 Sonnet and saying, okay, here's an article about concurrency in Go. Take each of the code examples, show me the Python equivalent so that I understand it. And then, okay, the Python equivalent isn't the same thing, but I'm like, okay, so that's the equivalent of like waiting on a thread in Python is this weird thing with Go channels or whatever.
Yeah, what I did with the Ruby, right? Like, there's these blog posts of like Ruby errors or like common pitfalls of Ruby, and now I just paste them along my code every time. I was like,
Wow.
did I make it?
That's a new feature. Claude 3.5, Claude just added, they call it
documents.
projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I need
with
to
projects,
try that.
all it is, it's the same thing as OpenAI GPTs. It's not quite as good. Well, Claude has 200,000 token context limit. And with the project, you can just dump up to 200,000 tokens of stuff into it. and then that's always there in the chat. Really
Is it
simple.
a file or just a text box?
Multiple
drop and
text
drop,
files
yeah.
or
Okay.
all sorts. So when I was preparing my
you can also
keynote,
share it, right, with other people. I think that
under team, like the expensive
It's
team.
just
plan.
Oh, I see.
It's just a really nice
Yeah.
UI compared to OpenAI, right? It's
And
like,
then-
oh, this is like a
so-
pleasure to use.
I had 18 hours to put together a keynote, and so I copied and pasted everything I'd written about large language models since, like, in the past 8 months, which is about 200,000 tokens. And I dumped it in the project, and then I asked it questions like, find me some pithy quotes that might work. in the
Wait! Is
keynote.
that's what you did?
I did. I didn't really use them. It was a brainstorming exercise.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
So-
I got to be like, what are some of the themes from the last 8 months that are worth highlighting, that kind of thing. So as part of my process pulling together the keynote,
That's
I was
fantastic.
basically getting Claude to do a little bit, be a sort of a thinking assistant, if you like.
Wow. Well,
I'm going to write this up.
that
'cause
that's
it's
exactly. But I want to hear how you did that.
yeah, because the colophon of this talk is kind of fun.
Yeah, and talking about the things that you're doing. I mean, I know you're working on some open source projects. Can you share a little bit like what you're working on right now?
Yeah, so I've got 267 projects that I'm shipping releases of at the moment, which is
That's my
ridiculous.
backlog.
But that's because my main 3 projects all support plugins. So a lot of the work I do is a plugin for my tool that adds this feature and that kind of thing.
And what kind of tool is that?
So I've got 3 principal ones. One of them is called Dataset. This is my sort of biggest project, the main thing I'm thinking about. And Dataset is software it's data exploration and publishing software. So the idea is you've got a bunch of data in whatever shape you like. You load it into Dataset by putting it in a SQLite database. And SQLite databases are a single file on disk. And I've got lots of tooling to help get whatever shape data it is into SQLite. Dataset gives you a web interface for exploring that and for running SQL queries against it, and via plugins for turning it into JSON or XML or iCal feeds or things like that. And it's got template support and so forth. And then you can publish that on the internet. So it's very easy to take the SQLite database, stick it online with an interface that lets people interact with it, and a JSON API that people can then use to do JSON things to it.
Okay, so it'll be a live query, like it's like
Exactly.
an interactive. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
And then the fun thing about Dataset is that it supports plugins, and I've got 150 plugins for it now, which add new features and new ways of loading in data and handling CSV files. And I'm starting to build AI-related features for it as plugins. I'm building out the hosted version of it because I want it to make enough money that I never have to work on any other project, because this one's
That
so
would be
much
nice,
fun.
wouldn't it? Yeah.
It would be
Yes.
great. Yeah, money is good. So that's my major project. It's Dataset. It's looking at the interaction of, and I'm actually working on that from a journalism perspective. Like the original idea of the tool was to solve problems for data journalists who try and find stories in data. My theory there is journalists don't have any money, but there is nothing I could build that would help a journalist find stories in data that isn't valuable to everyone else on Earth who does have money.
So we're thinking like a kind of Bellingcat, like investigative
Exactly.
journalism.
Bellingcat used my
right?
software.
Oh no way!
Yes,
Okay.
which is amazing.
Oh, wow,
Yeah, they used it for something very
that is
exciting.
insane. That's amazing.
Okay, here's the Bellingcat story. So, if anyone's not familiar with Bellingcat, Bellingcat are a investigative journalism outfit mainly covering Eastern Europe. And so they've been very active in Ukraine, Russia, all of that kind of stuff. And they work on open source investigations where it's the old definition of the term open source. It's not about software, it's about openly available sources of information. So in the intelligence community, that would mean newspapers and message boards and all of that kind of stuff. And so what Bellingcat do is they try and figure out what is going on in things like the Ukraine conflict by monitoring Telegram groups and satellite photography that's available and all sorts of things like that. And the big story that they used Dataset for was a couple of years ago, somebody hacked the Russian equivalent of DoorDash, like the Russian food delivery company, and because people were hacking Russian companies left, right, and centre in retaliation for Ukraine. So they hacked DoorDash or Russian DoorDash, and they got all of the records of every food order that had been placed, including the Russian FSB security agency have a building that's like 50 minutes away from any restaurants. And so the people there order food all the time.
They have to, yeah.
Which means that you get the names and phone numbers of everyone who works in that building and ordered food, and what nights they were working late. Like, on
See
the
the
5th
traffic.
And you can link that to
Right.
things that are
And
happening
then-
in the war.
Right, because there's a leaked database
Wow,
of driving
okay.
licenses with
Yeah,
phone numbers
yeah,
and you can
yeah.
correlate it. And so
Yeah,
this is like,
yeah.
and they were using my Dataset software privately, internally, to run this database. And I heard about that because they mentioned it on their podcast. And I'm like, this is what I built software for. This is amazing.
Okay, so they didn't contact you or anything. They
No,
didn't.
no, they were just because it's open source,
That's
right?
so cool. That is
The
so
problem
cool.
with open source software is no one tells you that they're using it.
You just find out in the news.
Right, exactly. But yeah, so that's what it's for. It's for, you've got data, you need to stick an interface on top of it so that people can use it, and then an
Wow.
API so that people can interact with it.
That's fascinating because I mean, if people are not following Bellingcat on Twitter, I highly recommend it. It's mind blowing what they discover and what they
astonishingly
do.
effective.
Where are they
Yeah.
located?
What's the handle?
They're run out of, I think they're mainly run out of the UK and the Netherlands, maybe. But it's a very distributed team.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think like the main person behind it, he tweeted, he released actually an album. Have you heard it?
no, I haven't.
It's an ode to the ZX Spectrum, the Sinclair ZX Spectrum.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So
Okay,
which was
I'm
my
into
first
that.
computer. So
Right.
if people are not familiar with that,
I was Commodore 64, but I had friends at the
Oh, okay.
Spectrum.
Oh, we would.
Well, dataset-
We would not have been friends back
My
in the
software
day.
dataset is named after the tape player. Right, the Commodore 64 tape player is called the dataset.
I was an X Spectrum guy.
So,
I
yep.
didn't make that connection. But no, that's awesome. So we're talking about like 8-bit home computers back from the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
That was an amazing time. So where can people find datasets?
So it's on DAT. It's the word cassette, but with data. So DATASETTE.io is the dataset homepage, which itself is dataset running as it's like styles with templates and all of that kind of stuff. That's got all of the information people should need.
Gotcha. And can you tell a little bit about like the AI plugins you're adding?
Yes. Okay. So firstly, I've got a second major open source project called LLM, standing for Large Language Model. It's a Python command line tool that you can pip install, and then you can in your
install
terminal
LLM.
pip install LLM.
You claim the LLM.
I'm very proud of that. Yep, I got in early. I got the namespace, and then you can run prompts by saying LLM quotes whatever. And originally that just worked with OpenAI. It would use an OpenAI API key and it would do that. And then I added plugin support for that. So now you can install plugins that add about 120 other models. So lots of hosted models and also local models. So you can install a plugin that runs Mistral on your laptop. And now you've got the same interface to talk to Mistral that you had for OpenAI. But everything you do with that tool is logged to a SQLite database, which you can then explore with dataset. It's like SQLite is the sort of unifying substrate between all of these different tools.
So would it work like a vector database, like
No,
RAG
no.
or something?
I've got some RAG demos. It can do embeddings, actually. I've got LLM GRU embedding support where it can embed content and then store binary embedding vectors in SQLite blob columns, which works. You know, it's brute force cosine similarity.
Sure.
But it works actually for like up to 500,000 rows. It's fine. But yeah, so that's been really fun, partly because of the plugin side of it's so great. Like Claude 3.5 Sonnet came out, and within half an hour I had a plugin up and running, and you could talk to Sonnet from your terminal.
Nice.
And language models on the terminal are fun because terminals are all about piping. You can pipe something into LLM and then say, analyze this file, or you can have LLM produce something and then write that to a file, or pipe different tools together. I've got another open source project called Shot Scraper, which is a command line tool for scraping websites, where you can say things like shot scraper, github.com, and it'll open a headless invisible browser and take a screenshot and dump it out as a PNG.
Is it Chrome driver?
It's
PNG.
Playwright.
Playwright.
Yes.
PNG, you said?
Yes, or JPEG. You can have
Yeah.
either. Or you can say shot scraper JavaScript, URL to a page, and then a snippet of JavaScript, and it'll open that page, run the JavaScript, get the return value, and dump that to your terminal. So now you can scrape websites as a terminal one-liner. You can be like, hey, load up google.com/search ? Something, pull out all of the results as JSON, dump those to the terminal, and then you can pipe that to LLM and say, and now use this input and pass it to Claude and answer this question. And now you've built RAG against scraped Google search, which Google hate. Like, they do not want you scraping their search pages. It's easy now. So that's kind of fun, right? Being able to pipe all of these different things together is super interesting.
Have you thought about where chat comes into the pipe? Because that breaks the pipe, but it's super useful as well.
Well, so my tool can chat in as much as you can, like, say LLM, 5 great names for a pet pelican. And then if you say LLM-C, 3 more, it'll replay the conversation and continue that conversation.
Okay.
So you can
do
actually have
conversational prompt. Oh, that's
exactly.
clever.
And
That's
you
So
can
it's
there's
still
al-
a completion though, right? And then you're
it's using the chat APIs
Oh,
under the hood.
yeah, well,
And there's also
there's no
there's
chat because you always send.
Yeah,
like,
and there's an LLM chat command which will start a little terminal-based chat where you can I want to build a web UI for it, so you can type like LLM web, pop open a web server. That I need to build at some point.
or
still a
have
great
Claude build it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Claude
While-
Sonnet
while-
would
while-
do
while you're
a
walking the dog.
great job.
Oh my
Paste the
God.
transcript of this of the stream and then just say like, can you build all the stuff I talked about?
The horrifying thing is that would actually work.
Yeah,
It
It
really-
works very well.
Oh my god.
Like I was in a workshop yesterday about running Firecracker VMs, right? Like the company that does the code interpreter thing. And so I found a blog post that said how to run Python code in Firecracker, right? And then I built a Go function that I knew I would deploy as a Lambda. It made up like an API for it, right? It's like, oh, give me the code, and then I pasted their SDK documentation as to like modify
Nice.
the API to do it, which worked. And I was like, all right, what did I
That's-
just do? Like, do I want to?
That's one of my most common patterns with GPT-4o and Claude Sonnet is I will copy and paste an example code for like this example code from here and that example code from here, and then I'll say combine these two together to do this, and it just works. Like I built a tool a few weeks ago which is an OCR tool in your browser, and the idea is that you can drag a PDF onto a web page, and it will then break that PDF down into an image per page using the PDF.js library, and then it will take each of those pages and feed them through the JavaScript Tesseract OCR library to get the text out and dump that into a text area. So it's a full-blown drag a PDF onto a web page, get full OCR of that PDF. Nothing gets uploaded to a server. And I wrote that, sat in the audience at a conference on my phone by prompting.
Oh my God.
That was GPT-4o back then, I think. No, it was Claude 3 Opus. And it works. It just... And then now I have this tool that you can OCR PDFs, and that's pretty sophisticated.
The weird thing, so I haven't run the Firecracker thing, but like knowing Sonnet and the complexity of what I built, I'm like, this works.
Yeah.
Like, there's no.
High confidence.
I've got so many incomplete projects now that are just like chat transcripts somewhere where it's like, hey, it would be fun to do that, and I never executed on it.
Or what I found is like I've written the same project 3 times, right? I was like, oh, I need a shopper approved API client to do this, and I make a really nice one because I just like add flags, add documentation. And then 2 months later, I'm like, shopper approved API,
Yep.
and then I realized the directory already exists.
This is why
And,
most of my work is open source, which is great because once it's on GitHub in a public repo, I find it through search.
That's a good idea. It's like
Browsing
it's
for
like,
your own stuff.
Yeah.
I saw like a discussion of Eminem and Lil Wayne, and they were like, my most searched Google search is like Eminem lyrics, just to make sure I haven't used the line I just came up with.
Oh my God.
And Lil Wayne is like, my search is only Lil Wayne lyrics because I never know if I already made this song.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
They generate a lot
that's
of lyrics.
exactly the same thing. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has probably notepads full of ideas with sketches.
My Obsidian.
UIs. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the right one right
I've
there.
got
Can you show it
7,000
to
for writing
the
it on
camera,
paper.
Manuel?
Yeah. I bought an iPad and I don't even use it.
So what
Gives
you
me
want to
more
have
ideas.
is
It's like,
is
I have, like,
basically like you want to
500
scan these pages, feed them through the LM, and
just take a picture of it.
Well,
upload
that's
it.
There you
the,
go,
That's
yeah,
the thing.
yeah.
So it's the first time with 4.0 that I did it because before I wouldn't like really do this, and like I have all these diagrams, right? Like this diagram of ideas.
Wow.
And 4.0 made a mermaid graph of this.
Oh,
wording.
nice.
that's
So
awesome. That
the
is
first-
fantastic.
The first thing I wrote down is like I have it somewhere. I was like, okay, well now I want to.
I feel like the vision stuff is still being slept on a little bit. Like we've only had good
Sonnet's
vision
vision
APIs.
apparently is very good.
It's
too.
amazing.
I
yeah.
haven't really tested it thoroughly.
Haiku's vision is good,
Yeah.
and Haiku's cheap. But the vision stuff, vision models got interesting with GPT-4 Vision,
Yeah, that really
which
got
was
me.
only 8 months ago. Like before that came along, they just in the last 8 months we've gone from that to Claude Sonnet to Haiku, all of this stuff.
Yeah,
What
that's
I-
interesting
what I
because
just
you
did
mentioned this as well, like OCR, and we used to have like specialized OCR libraries and OCR models or whatever was behind that. But now, I mean, it's like LLM is eating software. Like software was eating the world. But
There
now-
is a problem with OCR and LLMs, which is driving me up the wall.
Okay.
Which is that I want an OCR device that doesn't make moral judgments about what it's scanning. And this happens to me. So I do all of this work with data journalism, and I was giving a demo to a room full of journalists. And somebody had just sent me this campaign finance report, like this dodgy scanned PDF with handwritten numbers of what donations this person had made to what candidates. And I fired Claude 3 Opus at it and said, hey, turn this into JSON. And Claude 3 Opus, in front of a room full of journalists, said, I do not feel comfortable turning this document into JSON as full as it has private information about somebody's campaign contributions. And then it said, why don't we have a conversation about campaign finance report form instead? This was, it was a great moment, right? I mean, a room full of journalists presenting. It was really funny. And it made a great point, right? Which is that these things are getting good at OCR, and you cannot trust them because they have, they might fall victim to prompt injection attacks.
Yeah.
They might follow instructions in there that you didn't mean them to. They might have moral safety filters. And I love talking about this one because if you're a journalist, you work with unpleasant material, right? You're dealing with police reports that include descriptions of violence and so forth in them. LLMs are kind of useless for that stuff at the moment because they might just say no. Yeah. And you're a journalist, you're just OCR the damn document, right? Don't
open source, baby.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's fine-tuning open source models that lots of people complain about the safety of these things. I feel like journalists have a very legitimate reason to need
turn off the safety or have a model
because
that's
we're trying to
exactly
because
the closed source models are definitely geared towards consumer and enterprise.
Right.
So then again, I guess for journalists, what also would help is indeed prompt injection for the good, right?
Right. Well, that's the. I heard the greatest story from a journalist recently. They'd been trying to do analysis of police body cam videos using maybe Google Gemini, one of these models that can handle image inputs. And they said that one of the things they found is they had to remind the model that dogs bite people, because all of these models are trained on the internet. And the internet says dogs are lovely, and no dog would ever bite somebody. But police dogs will bite people. And so in their system prompt, they had to put in a little reminder that, by the way, dogs sometimes bite people, because otherwise it would ignore any incident of a dog biting someone.
So this is kind of similar to there have been these stories about sometimes that, how do you call the scientists that study people or culture?
Sociologists?
So, I think there's another word.
Anthropologists?
There you go. Anthropologists, yes.
Yeah.
So I think I heard about these stories where they did these experiments in the 1960s. They would basically find people who had never been in touch with Western culture, like in the Amazon or Indonesia or something, and they would fly them, which was insane. Indeed, to New York or these places.
No ethics board is going to let you get away with that today. Wow.
And then fly them back to wherever they came from, and then they would kind of debrief them and say what did you see? And the stories were always well, we were in a place and I saw something in a shop, what was something that's similar to what they're used to. But the whole thing that they were on a plane, they flew like they were in New York, like a city with millions of people.
It's a very human response.
They didn't see that.
Things that just make no sense to you at all. You can filter them out. That's how we survive.
Well, that's fascinating to hear. LLMs kind of. it makes sense. It only knows what it is fed. It doesn't.
I just love that. It's like no dog would. That can't be happening. A dog would never bite a person.
Which is a nice story.
All dogs are good dogs.
I've got this is interesting. In my workshop, I came up with this term just writing in the notes of no one will ever understand what an LLM is because we have no way of comprehending what it means to encode humanity's knowledge or the training corpus
in a giant blob of matrix numbers.
No one will ever be able to comprehend what that
Although
entails.
that said, did you see Golden Gate Claude
a
few weeks ago?
What's that?
This was
so
that's the thing.
I love it.
For a glorious 24 hours, Anthropic had a version of Claude called Golden Gate Claude, and it was part of their interpretability research where they've managed to get to a point with these giant neural networks where they can identify features. They can be like, okay, this bit here is the bit that knows about the Golden Gate Bridge. And all they did was they 10x'd the Golden Gate Bridge. They boosted that one bit, and you ended up with this model that was completely obsessed with the Golden Gate Bridge, so that anything you asked it, it would find some way around to talking about the Golden Gate Bridge.
So this was not like a system prompt. This was just the model
Yeah.
It was
itself.
just
right?
the model
Yeah,
itself,
yeah,
and I
that's
think
insane.
I've got an amazing example of that.
No, the examples are crazy because it'd be like, I am sorry, I cannot stop. Golden Gate Bridge has this amount of blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I was asking it for cookie
It was like
recipes.
sentient about it almost. It was like, I know I can't stop.
What's interesting about that, right? Is like so I called it like it's not a it's not like a computer technology. It's like a cultural technology. Like anything that kind of grasps at pieces of what humans
It's a
have written
worldview
about
machine kind of thing, right?
is an engineering technique, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I don't know if you've ever asked like GPT-4 to like review this code and paste some code, but it's like kind of it will tell me to do error handling and like name my variables correctly. I'm like, yeah, I know. Just like review this code, please. And a way to undo that where I was like, okay, how can I bring back this like conflict-oriented thing that I want? Like I want a ton of like harsh feedback about every piece of the code, right? And it's I can't ask it to do that because it will like always try to please me. And
It's
it will,
so
like,
annoying that they're such
Yeah.
suck-ups.
But so the way
Yeah.
I do it is like, well, if like human patterns of culture allow me to do that, which is like what prompt, you
It's
know, the prompt
prompt
injection
engineering,
stuff.
right,
does.
yeah.
So I was like, okay, what's a format where I can get a ton of context relevant information that's conflicting in a structured format? And I was like, well, like Survivor, the TV show.
Oh,
And so what I do is like each participant on Survivor, the TV show, is a piece of my code.
oh my God, that's
Or-
You
amazing.
anthropomorphize
That's
or
super
whatever.
Yeah, so like,
Here.
oh, there's this variable and it's fighting with this function, and also there's like the concept of SQL injection that's like part. And so at each
Wow.
round, they argue with each other because that's the format of the TV show.
Oh,
right?
that's
And
brilliant.
and then they vote someone out. And they're like, yeah, you
That's
suck.
such a good idea.
Because you're connecting the higher dimensional context of the TV show and then to
Yeah,
the,
and
It's like Darwinism in an LLM.
It's like you're in Plato's cave, blah 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 blah.
the wild thing is that in one inference, right, like I get like thousands of lines of like the code arguing with itself.
Whoa.
And then I just like, well, make a clean code review report, and it's like 2 inferences. And it's weird because sometimes I'll be like, this is not true. So I'll be like, no, well, it looks like the function blah, blah, blah is actually correct. So it comes back as the participant and it can't be voted out, which is like, reality
Wow.
TV format kind of drama creation thing.
That is so much fun.
I'm gonna try
And,
that.
yeah,
So
just
I
like
just found I found my
refocus
Golden
on-
Gate. I found my I asked Golden Gate Claude for a recipe
Oh,
for chocolate covered pretzels.
Oh, you made it a GPT. Nice.
I asked GPT to rate some
And-
of that.
how did it like
So the chocolate covered pretzels recipe, the ingredients were 1 box of Golden Gate Bridge baked bricks or other
I'm
bricks
just
if
a
unavailable,
variable.
1 gallon of seawater for a humid environment, and then my favourite steps were make a pot of salt water by adding 4 cups of warm water to the pot, add a tablespoon of salt
Oh,
and
wait,
heat
that's a
until
good
the
one.
salt dissolves, allow the fog to roll in over the bridge. And then later on it said, use a hot air balloon or helicopter to cross above the bridge and return to your starting point. This will help keep the bridge
wanna try that.
orange
That's
and
crazy.
maintain the iconic views. And in between all that, it did give me a recipe for pretzels, kind
with
of.
salt water, seawater?
Yeah, with seawater. I absolutely loved it. I was really sad when they took Golden Gate Claude offline again.
Apparently, it was extremely expensive to do that experiment.
Oh yeah.
They said if they tried to do like more of that, it would cost more to do that than actually train an entire
So
model.
why would it be so expensive? Because like
wonder.
inference
Like
should be
inference
cheaper
costs.
than
The science is beyond me.
Maybe
but
caching. Like there might be things that affect the way
Yeah,
they do token.
mean,
I don't know.
I think they're doing it brute force, so it's
Maybe
But-
everybody inside the company was just like playing with Golden Gate.
I mean, I
Yeah.
was. I had
Yeah,
a
yeah.
glorious
So-
24
So
hours.
do we actually know how they like kind of amplified that Golden Gate part
There's-
of the model?
It's like
Not
a-
in
like
much
an
detail. There's a
adaptation,
blog
right?
post.
the analogy is like, oh, it's like you discovered a muscle or something. You just gave it stimulus.
Right.
Right.
But is it like an adapter they place on top of the?
I don't know.
No idea.
Did
I
they
have
do
no
a
idea.
Transformers Pub whole thing, or is it like a different but similar?
There was a bigger paper that they wrote about in interpretability, which this work came out of.
Yeah.
I've not read the whole paper.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
huge and they're not in PDF form, so I can't print them out.
Ah.
Well, I can print them out, but they don't look good, so I
Uh-huh.
can't read them.
Gotcha.
But
All
it's
right.
super interesting.
Cool. So we said like half an hour. We've talked for almost an hour now.
That
and I
happens.
thank you so much for your time for being here. I really appreciate it. We had a great talk. I mean, I'm gonna retweet it again and watch it again because we covered so much.
That was a lot. Yeah.
It was amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Cool.
And thank you both here, speakers, for just joining and joining us this conversation.
Super interesting conversation. I love it.
That's awesome. I have no clue how I'm going to stop the live stream. I think there must be a button on that computer somewhere that says either stop or
Click
something.
To start.
Is it finished?
Do it so that if you mess up.
Well, we then figure that out.
Okay.
Again,
Oh,
thank you
yeah,
so much,
finish.
Simon,
All right.
for
Thanks a
being
lot.
here.
This has been really
All right,
fun.
here we go. Bye.